what we got going on here now is I have added Lord Crazy and Lord Micah to the picture. Lord Crazy and Lord Micah are actually friends that I know from real life. They were drug dealers, like hardcore drug dealers. The drug dealers are typically the most popular people. So you're hanging out at these fucking places, and you're hanging around these drug dealers and drug addicts, and they're gambling and they're doing criminal stuff and talking about shooting people. So Lord Crazy is going to get a house here, and I want Lord Crazy to never be home. Lord Micah's home, but Lord Crazy is not. He might say he doesn't even know who Lord Crazy is. I want there to be like wanted posters or something around the place looking for Lord Crazy. So Lord Micah is keeping the homestead, and I do want Lord Micah to be dealing some type of chemicals in the region. So Lord Micah is going to be in control of chemicals. I went ahead and I put Lycia's house here, and I think I'm going to keep that there. One thing that I was tossing around was this idea that Lycia, the city, doesn't exist. Lycia Hollow exists, but that's not even the real name of the cave. When you enter this cave, what it actually is a little stupid fucker in there with one eye named King Clops. So King Clops is in this fucking hole, and he's the boss, and he's the end boss of Glowtica. So King Clops never got enough play, and he should have, because not only did he create the baddies, all these fuckers were in the baddies. Viper was such a... You know that Viper joined the baddies? He joined the baddies, and then in a month, he turned on them. And he was like, you guys fucking suck. This guild sucks. I'm leaving it. So I think Viper's the perfect first baddie to fight once you get through here. And I'm thinking that the opposite boots need to be obtained somewhere. Maybe in Destiny, I don't know. But they need to come from somewhere. And perhaps the opposite boots are needed to get through Eastward Splinter because the snake has hypnotic eyes and it'll turn you to stone. You can't get past the snake. The snake is also a legend. People don't know if it exists. And I think that this snake might even be perhaps deep underground. So you first enter here and everything's just burrowed off with thorns and winding roots and thistles, giant thorns and pricks, prickles, pricklies and things like that. You can't get through that and past that passage. There's a lot of fog and mist. It's weird. But then there's like this hole you can go down in where you have to figure out how to get down there. Maybe there's other items you have to collect. The Sphinx or some type of pyramid or something. There's like a very rare Graal lot you can get, which is a white diamond. You can only get it right here. So that's your first reward for getting past the Eastward Splinter finally. And down there, the snake is guarding these tablets of truth because his whole entire purpose was to spread lies and discord and dystopia throughout the lands. So the snake, the Viper, or just simply Viper as we call him, it's a giant snake with hypnotic eyes. You can use the opposite boots to approach him, and then you can turn them off and slash him. But you can only look at him for so long. Maybe your player starts to slow down and you start to turn to stone and you have to turn back around again. So you have to use the opposite boots to get through here and to beat the snake. But down here, there's a number of tablets of truth that will start to tell you a lot of the facts that you don't know about this area. So a lot of things that are lies will start to come to truth through the first treasure trove past Eastward Splinter, and that's where you're going to get a massive reward. So he's guarding this underground type of library and trying to retain the facts of history for himself. All the way through here, you think you're getting to Lycia Hollow, and what you find out is that too is a lie. There is no Lycia Hollow. It's a den of a giant cyclops who's a piece of trash and who's always whining about Pachuca stealing his castle. So he's hanging out in this fucking cave here, and he's the 8th leg of the spider's web. So you've got Viper, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So King Clops is the 8th leg of the spider's web. It's going to be very difficult to get through the Panniers, which is now completely taken over by the spider's web, and it's just dark and murky and horrific and full of bones, and the pine trees are no longer these peaceful symbols of everlasting life, the ability to withstand this cold. Instead, there's this spooky realization that the Panniers have been overtaken by the spider's web and the horrors of the baddies and the various people inside of it. You will have to defeat King Clops, and after you defeat King Clops, you can get to the lower plateaus below Glowtica. You think you're getting to Lycia. The truth is that there is no Lycia. Lycia is just a person up here, and she's kind of an on-again, off-again frenemy of the baddies down here, of these. And I don't want these to be people. I want them to be like creatures, I think. So like Viper is going to be maybe some of them are people, but Viper's going to be a giant creepy snake. Spider's going to be a giant creepy spider. And if you remember, there was actually a thing in Graal called the spider. Let me see if I can find that. So this thing here, this little spider, there's going to be a bunch of these, but then there needs to be a giant horrific one, which is going to represent Spider, who is one of the biggest villains of all time in Graal. We'll have to flesh that out later, but there will be a bunch of these little spiders to start. There will also be a giant Cyclops who you will have to defeat in a cave. Anyways, so Lycia has a house over here. There is no Lycia city. I think that we can have cities inspired by Lycia just because they're rumored to be called Lycia. But I think that what happens here is that the baddies are telling you that this is the path to Lycia because they want to lure people in, almost like sirens. They want to lure you in so they can devour you. So what's happening here is Lycia is a character. She has a house, and she's kind of, I think, bigger. Like, she's a bigger girl. She's really oversized. She's really kind of depressed and gothic. She's known to hurt herself and use drugs. She's really into chemicals. So she's a big friend of Lord Crazy and Lord Micah. So anyway, she's neighbors with Lord Crazy. She's little friends with Lord Crazy and Lord Micah. And she is really big into chemicals, so she's probably a witch. She's probably a big witch. She's deep into chemicals. She has access to potions and things. So you're going to get some of those from Lord Micah. And Lord Micah is dealing the tea to Eastward Splinter. So that's where the tea is coming from. It's kind of like magical tea and herbs happening over at Eastward Splinter. And I'm thinking Lycia can work there. Lord Micah is the dealer, and Lycia works at Eastward Splinter. She has this weird love-hate relationship with the spider's web. Without going too deep into that, I do want to start talking about these other aspects, which is what the purpose is, perhaps, of Freak's Temple of Insanity. You might get a couple things, but it needs to be like a massive dungeon. And another thing that we know about Freaked is that Freaked ran a guild called BOAM, which was called Bushes on a Mission. So how bringing that into here? I like the idea of it because you could carry bushes around and then hide in a bush and then like spy on people. So Freaked, I think, needs to have an interest in espionage, spying, infiltration, things like that. I think I want there to be giant bushes. You know how, like, outside mansions, those bushes you've seen in mansion front yards or lawns where they're shaped like spectacular creatures or geometric shapes. I'm picturing something of this sort at the Temple of Insanity. I don't think that that's the most interesting thing, but I do think that that's part of it. Perhaps it's surrounded by this labyrinth here. And I do want there to be some aspect of bushes and espionage. Now, of course, that's not the depth that you can take the concept of insanity. So I think that that's not really the most interesting thing, but I am touching on those because I want to draw in aspects of the characters of who they were as people and players. I think Freaked needs to be maybe a little neurotic and a little freaky, a little tweaky. I think he might be a little paranoid as a character. What you're going to do here is, in Destiny, this is where things are starting to get deeper, guys. In Destiny, there is this here. This is the Orange Graal. It never really got fleshed out because, again, there's a lot of stuff that was in there that they just didn't know about or they didn't care about. So we have this, and this is the Gravity Graal. It's the Orange Graal, or Graal, whatever, that you get in Destiny through a certain quest that involves a witch and a centaur. The cup is filled with centaur blood. You have to complete the Gravity Temple, likely to get the Gravity Boots or something. And you are then able to further quest and collect in other extended editions of the content. You can get the Orange Graal. So the Orange Graal is filled with centaur blood. It doesn't have to be. It can be filled with other things. But to start off, you end up having to fill it with centaur blood for a particular reason, and then you're able to take the goblet in some fashion for, maybe you killed the person who had to collect the blood for her. But whatever it is, you end up with the Grail, and this is how you collect the Orange Graal, which is the Gravity Graal. Now, what the Gravity Grail allows you to do is allows you to fill things inside of it. So, like, it will basically hold many different types of elixirs, and they will also stay inside of the goblet. If you go down underwater, the blood is not going to fly out of the cup into the water as you would expect a liquid to do deep beneath the surface of water. The centaur blood is going to stay inside of the goblets. So then what you're able to do with the orange grail is you're able to find a pocket of air. Somewhere down here, there is a pocket of air. Maybe you have to create it or unleash a mechanism of underwater, I'm thinking methane gas that's collected deep beneath perhaps some type of like foggy swamp or geyser, something of sorts. You collect a methane pocket that you can then resurface in, and you can pour the goblet into an item that you collect at Freak's Temple of Insanity. So what you get at Freak's Temple of Insanity is the Purple Grail. The Purple Grail is going to have the ability to time travel. With the Centaur blood, you can pour the Centaur blood into the Purple Grail, and that will allow you to drink from the Purple Grail. And when you drink from the Purple Grail, you travel back in time. How long you travel back in time, I'm not sure if you can switch it or if it's a time limit by however much blood you've drank. Maybe that time wears out and you have to perpetually, kind of refill it to go back in time. But what you're able to do then is, I'm picturing, because you've traveled back in time now, all of this water is gone. It's no longer underwater. You're now back in Glowtica as it was. Things will be renamed slightly. Things will be different. The original characters who lived in these houses are no longer going to be dead. The buildings aren't going to be in ruins. It's not going to be taken over by creatures. The Paniers will likely be a peaceful forest. And you can go through the world here and experience things that you've been hearing about and information and quests that you've been completing and collecting. You can live them, relive them for real. And then you can interact with the characters while they're alive. So there's probably going to be some type of quest as you drink from the Purple Grail of time. Maybe sometimes things can also get mixed up. Maybe you can change things that affect the future, perhaps. You can mess things up. When it comes to traveling back in time, Glowtica will be completely transformed into its original state, and you will be able to have insider information about underground networks that you never would have had otherwise. So you can get into different areas. There's areas you can't get into that you can get in underwater. So like underwater, there's some places you can get to when you're in the future, you're not allowed in. The first thing that happens when you go to the past is you wind up in jail because you're not allowed to be there. You're in the wrong location. However, that would then give you some type of access and inside experience into old knights system. So perhaps you start to experience like Gandarian, who was the Knight Chief, the Chief of the Knights. I'm not sure the term I'm going to use. I don't like the word chief, but something of the sort. You have to break out of jail somehow, and then you have to experience the world in a completely different way. It's not going to be like it is in the future when it's underwater. What happens then too is that Destiny transforms into Pachuca's old levels. The Rainbow Palace and Pachuca's old castle are now in place. I don't think you can go everywhere, but you can go through into Pachuca's old levels. Whatever happened to them, we don't know where they went. Just assume that we'll be able to reproduce them of some sort or find them. You can go through Pachuca's old levels, and Pachuca's now in power. The god of mischief, he's now in power, and his temple is in full effect. I don't know if Freaked is alive underwater in the future or if he's alive in the past. So maybe Freaked is alive in the past, perhaps. I'm not sure. I'm not going to worry too much about that. But there is going to be this underground epic quest, and I don't think they have it fully fleshed out. I think that they're just kind of in the turmoils of the chaos and the mischief, where they are trying to figure out how they're going to take down Pachuca and Azrael. So Pachuca and Azrael have devastated the land, and Pachuca's fucking out of control. And so Armageddon ends up being a key piece of that. But again, I don't think that you can just approach him and things just fall into place. Because I don't think that he even understands that he wants to take him down. I don't think that people understand. You have to rally. You have to do the work of rallying and connecting the people and getting them on board with you to do a coup. So you could find Lord Crazy, and perhaps Lord Crazy has a Doom Sword. I do think you will need a Doom Sword at some point. So in order to take down Pachuca, you're going to need to find a Doom Sword of some sort. Whether you get that from Antago or Crazy, I don't know. But or Armageddon, and I don't think that they're all united just yet, but I do think that they're obviously discussing just how much Pachuca is a mess and how he's out of control. So you hear things of that, but they're all caught up in their own lives, and things are starting to fall into disarray, and the land is turning to hell. There needs to be some type of rallying mechanism involved here. So back to the whole power of the gravity thing. I don't know if the Grail comes into play, but I do like the idea where you have to use the forces of gravity to, maybe that's where you find Antago. Perhaps through the power of gravity, they end up forming a ragtag coalition, and maybe you get to pick and choose who's on your team. It's not always the same thing, so everybody's experience is different. So anyways, you end up having to rally different forces and experiencing the world as it was in different ways and finding a way to take down Pachuca's palace. And so there will be a doom sword at some point. You have no idea where it is. Maybe it's not, maybe it doesn't exist at all. But whatever it is, there is rumors of it. As you go back in time, that's where you'll end up finding like these wanted posters looking for Lord Crazy and looking for Antago. And you have maybe Gallons in there because you have to have him in there. Him and Pachuca are putting hits out on the people with the Doom Sword. And of course, Armageddon's ultimately the one who was behind equipping people with those powers. So there's going to be a huge emphasis with Armageddon being at the center of the story. And his trading post in the future that you see in Destiny now is just an echo of a much larger story that exists. So yeah, so King Klops may not be in the cave in the future, which is underwater. He might be somewhere else in the past, but you might not be able to access it. He might actually be at the baddie's castle before Pachuca took it down. And he winds up as the epic boss in Lycia's Hollow, which is technically not Lycia's Hollow. That's just a lie that Viper and the Spider's Web tells. So Viper conjured up this lie that this was Lycia's Hollow in the story, but it never was. The other stuff I haven't really fleshed out yet, but I did want to touch on the Lord Crazy and Lord Micah edition. Lycia is officially going to be in there, and I do need her to be in here. And I think that this whole area can, maybe the Lycia ruins from real life, right? There's a whole actual Lycia ruins. We will draw on that for inspiration for her area. I put the purple Graal here. This is, so Azrael was the god of death, and he was a massive accomplice to Pachuca. And he was also the first GP, as they called him, which is Graal police. I don't like the term police because it's so modern. So I think he should be like one of the first actual knights or whatever. Gandarian was also a police chief. I think there needs to be a connection between Gandarian and Azrael. I think Azrael needs to come out in the past. I don't know that he needs to be down here. Maybe he is. Maybe he lives somewhere else, but I think he needs to be involved. Perhaps he's a corrupt police or guard, and he interfaces with Gandarian, and maybe Gandarian is being begrudgingly under his watchful eye and kind of pushed around by his corruption. And Azrael, being the god of death, I think there needs to be something involved with that quest. Maybe you have to defeat Azrael before you can defeat Pachuca. I'm not sure. There's just something involving the god of death and these underground coalitions. I do also want to bring in Ultimate Weapon as a character. Ultimate Weapon was the god of killing. And I think that Ultimate Weapon needs to be, you can't find him. You don't know if he's a real person or not, but I think he needs to be involved in this mix. You hear about him and he will appear in some fashion. I think Ganmon has a statue of Ultimate Weapon here. People are claiming he's a legend. They don't know if he exists or not. If he is real, perhaps you encounter him. I don't want to give too much away, I think, because what's the point in doing that? But I do want there to be an element of mystery involving Ultimate Weapon being involved in this underground coup or guerrilla coalition to overthrow the god of mischief. And so in the past, Pachuca's levels are in place of Destiny. So we're just going to say like Destiny and Pachuca's levels are basically the same world. They're just in different time periods. So Pachuca's levels are in the past, and then they were taken over by the god of gravity. This world is underwater in the future, and in the past it's not. So in the past, you can encounter these characters. Ultimate Weapon would be involved, and he's not from Glowtica, someone who you may encounter at some point. And so jumping forward in time, you do still need to jump forward in time to do various tasks as well. I'm not really sure how and what all these tasks are going to be and what the best way to do it, especially if you can flip back and forth between your Bomby avatar and your player avatar. And I think you only get to have two. So you have your player avatar and you have your Bomby avatar. You can only switch between those two. Maybe there's a third, but at most there would be three. But anyway, this is the latest update. We're going to have to, I think, add more female characters into the scene. So there's not very many. Right now we have Japethica and Lycia. That's not very many. I mean, of course, there could always just be made up partners for the male characters who just make up a female who wasn't a real player or doesn't have to have their own house, of course. So we can do some of that. But some of the energy, I feel like, needs to be balanced out a lot. There needs to be a lot more feminine energy being brought in here. And a huge part of that is because the Graal history was so dominated by male figures. So we don't have to be constricted by that. We can certainly start looking at the big picture and saying, okay, where's the female energy? Where's that come in? How do we make sure that this feels like a complete and whole picture and whole world?